The stars stretched endlessly across the dark sky, glittering like tiny jewels scattered across black velvet. The human starship Aurora drifted through the outer rim of the Zathran cluster, its silver hull gleaming faintly in the distant starlight. Commander Alina Voss stood on the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back, eyes fixed on the endless void. Her crew moved around her with quiet precision, each performing their tasks with practiced skill. They were explorers, scientists, and soldiers, but above all, they were humans, a species that had survived against impossible odds, not because they were the strongest, but because they were clever, resilient, and unafraid of risk. The day had been quiet, almost painfully so. Sensors were scanning for new planets, abandoned satellites, and signs of ancient civilizations. Communication channels hummed softly, mostly idle chatter from distant colonies. Alina had almost convinced herself that this mission would be uneventful, routine even. She had barely begun to relax when an unusual signal interrupted the monotony. It was faint at first, barely detectable over the static of space, but it carried something that caught Alina's attention immediately: desperation. "Commander," Lieutenant Rajan said, his voice tense but controlled, "we're receiving a transmission. It's unlike anything we've seen before. Can you translate it?" And yet here they were, reaching out, desperate. "Begging for help," she repeated, the words feeling strange in her mouth. Why would the Zalarians need humans? Stories of the Vreth had always been terrifying. A hive-minded species, relentless and merciless. They consumed everything in their path, leaving nothing behind. Entire star systems had vanished in their wake. Even the Zalarians, known for their unmatched fleets and advanced weapons, were apparently struggling. Alina's mind raced. The Zathran cluster was far from the core of human territory, a place few dared to venture. And yet here was an opportunity or a risk of unimaginable scale. Helping the Zalarians could bring humanity prestige, allies, and knowledge beyond imagination, but it could also bring death. "Show me the message," she said, moving closer to the console. The translation appeared line by line, jagged and fragmented. Words like desperate, survive, and queen repeated in a pattern that made Alina's pulse quicken. The Zalarians were not just asking for ships or weapons, they were pleading for a solution. A human solution. Her officers exchanged nervous glances. Some were hesitant. "Commander," her science officer said, "we don't know the scale of the Vreth threat. This could be a trap. The Zalarians are proud. They wouldn't usually beg for help unless they were truly desperate. That might mean the Vreth are overwhelming. Prepare the ship for jump to Zalarian space. I want all sensors online and weapons ready. If the Zalarians are telling the truth, we might be the only help they have." Alina walked along the bridge, her eyes scanning the viewscreen, imagining what awaited them. Destroyed cities, burning fleets. The thought made her stomach tighten, but she had learned long ago that fear could be a tool if controlled, a weakness if it ruled you. The jump through subspace was quick and disorienting. Stars stretched into long, blinding streaks before snapping back into view as the ship emerged near the coordinates given by the Zalarians. What greeted them was a scene that no human had ever seen firsthand. The Zalarian homeworld was a shattered jewel. Cities that had once sparkled with crystalline towers and shimmering spires now lay in ruins. Smoke rose from the remains, twisting into dark plumes against the purple sky. Entire fleets floated lifelessly above the planet, wrecked and burning. It was chaos, but not the chaos of disorganization. Everything spoke of overwhelming force, precise and devastating. Alina felt a mix of awe and horror. "Open a channel to their command," she ordered. "Let's see this queen for ourselves." "Humans," Kalira said, her voice a melodic combination of tones and harmonics, "we are at the edge of extinction. The Vreth swarm consumes all that we hold dear. Our fleets are broken, our defenses failing. We beg you to aid us." Entire civilizations had dismissed humanity as primitive, weak, or irrelevant. Yet here she was, standing at the threshold of a galactic empire's survival. Her mind raced with possibilities. "What kind of aid do you need?" Alina asked cautiously. She could feel the weight of history pressing on her shoulders. Humans had survived countless wars on Earth by thinking differently, by being unpredictable. That unpredictability might be their greatest weapon here. Kalira hesitated. Her gaze flicked to her advisors before returning to Alina. "We need a strategy, something your kind can conceive, for we have fought in all the ways known to us. Yet the Vreth adapt too quickly. Conventional tactics fail. We require the ingenuity of humans." Rajan broke the silence. "Commander, they truly mean it. If we refuse—" His voice trailed off. The implication was clear. If humanity did not intervene, the Zalarians might fall completely, and with them, the balance of power in this sector of the galaxy. Alina drew a deep breath. She thought of her crew, of the humans who had survived impossible odds on countless worlds. They thrived on adversity. They improvised, adapted, and dared where others feared. And yet she also knew the stakes. The Vreth were not to be underestimated. A single misstep could cost thousands of lives, human and Zalarian alike. "We will help," Alina said at last. Her voice was calm but resolute. "But understand this, we do not fight like you. We do not follow your patterns. We will teach, guide, and fight in ways the Vreth will not expect. If we succeed, your empire survives. If we fail—" She left the sentence unfinished, the silence heavy with its meaning. Queen Kalira inclined her head, a mixture of relief and lingering doubt in her gaze. "You honor us, humans. I trust your methods, even if I do not yet understand them." Alina saw it in the way her crew adapted alien technology in real time, making use of weaknesses that no Zalarian would have dared exploit. As the first human-led reconnaissance fleet prepared to launch, Alina stood on the observation deck, staring at the broken cities below. Smoke rose in spirals, fires burned unchecked, and the sounds of distant explosions reached even the orbiting ship. The scale of the Vreth assault was staggering, yet Alina felt a surge of confidence. Humanity had faced impossible odds before. They had survived wars, plagues, and natural disasters that had toppled civilizations. They were underestimated, but that was exactly why they could succeed now. She turned to her first officer. "Keep the crew ready. This will not be easy and we may lose many. But we are humans. We survive because we think differently. That's our weapon. That's our advantage. Remember that." But for the first time in the galaxy's history, humans were being called not just to survive, but to save an empire. And they were ready. Above the planet, the aurora gleamed against the sky, a human starship in the heart of alien chaos. The universe had underestimated them for too long. That mistake was about to cost the Vreth everything. The human crew of the Aurora moved quickly through the bustling Zalarian command station. The alien halls were unlike anything humans had ever seen. Crystal panels glowed with soft light, and intricate geometric patterns shifted slowly across the walls. Every surface seemed alive, humming with energy, a combination of advanced technology and alien artistry. Yet beneath the beauty, there was tension. Officers ran back and forth, their movements precise but hurried. The Zalarians were organized, but chaos had begun to creep into their order. Commander Alina Voss stood in the center of the main operations chamber, her eyes scanning the holographic displays showing the Vreth assault. Their fleets moved like a swarm of locusts, spreading destruction across the Zalarian worlds. Every attack was coordinated, precise, and merciless. The humans had never faced anything like it, yet Alina felt a familiar spark ignite inside her. Humans thrived in situations where others felt hopeless. They had survived because they were unpredictable. And now, that unpredictability was exactly what the Zalarians needed. Queen Kalira approached, her elegant form gliding across the chamber. Her face, marked by soft, luminous patterns, carried a gravity that made even seasoned humans pause. "You must understand," she said, her voice both beautiful and commanding. "The Vreth cannot be beaten by conventional means. They adapt faster than we can react. Our greatest fleets have been destroyed, our cities razed. We are desperate. Let's find a weakness. They repeat certain formations, Rajan said after a moment, pointing to a cluster of Vreth vessels. Every time they engage, they assume the target will respond the same way. They are intelligent, yes, but predictable in their predictability. Humans think differently. They see angles no one else considers. That's what we bring. The first human-led mission was set. Alina handpicked a team from her crew, blending pilots, engineers, and tacticians. They were to take a small fleet of hybrid ships, Xylarian designs adapted by humans, and test the first phase of their plan. The target, a Vreth supply convoy deep inside contested space. As the ships launched, the humans felt a surge of tension. Every crew member knew the stakes. Failure meant death, possibly even the loss of the Xylarian Empire. But in that tension there was focus. Humans had always thrived under pressure. Their instincts sharpened, their creativity flourished. The convoy appeared on the sensors, numerous Vreth vessels moving with deadly precision. Alina's team split into smaller groups, weaving through asteroid fields, using shadows and debris as cover. Xylarian ships, trained for rigid formations, struggled to adapt. Human pilots darted in unpredictable patterns, appearing in one place and disappearing in another, leaving the Vreth confused. "Hit the rear convoy," Alina shouted through the comms. "We take the engines offline, then pull back. No direct confrontation." Using electromagnetic pulses adapted from Xylarian technology, the humans disabled the engines of several Vreth ships. Chaos erupted in the formation as the swarm attempted to adapt, but the humans kept shifting, constantly changing positions, keeping the Vreth off balance. Queen Kalira watched from her command platform, astonished. They fight in ways I never imagined," she whispered. "They are not like us, they are unpredictable." Humans had proven their value, not through sheer firepower, but through ingenuity and audacity. Despite the success, the victory was tempered by loss. Several hybrid ships had been damaged beyond repair, and a few young Xylarian pilots had died in the confusion. Alina felt the weight of it. Human ingenuity could not erase the cost of war, but it could tip the scales. In the days that followed, humans trained Xylarian officers in unconventional tactics. They introduced ideas alien to the Empire, unpredictable maneuvers, feints, ambushes, and psychological warfare. The Xylarians struggled at first, bound by centuries of tradition. But slowly, they began to understand. The humans taught them to think like the unexpected, to see the battlefield from angles no Xylarian could conceive on their own. One evening, as the Aurora orbited the Xylarian capital, Alina met with Queen Kalira privately. The queen's expression was solemn. "Commander Voss," she said, "you bring a new way of thinking to my people. But can your methods hold against the full might of the Vreth? They are relentless. That is why we survive where others fail." Tactical exercises became increasingly daring, pushing Xylarian crews beyond anything they had known. The first full-scale engagement was a test. A Vreth advance fleet moved toward a strategically important Xylarian world. Human and Xylarian forces positioned themselves, hiding among asteroid belts, using planetary shadows, and employing decoys that would have been considered reckless by traditional Xylarian standards. Alina led the human wing personally, her heart steady despite the tension. As the Vreth ships approached, her team executed the plan flawlessly. Decoy formations drew the Vreth into a trap, while hidden Xylarian and human ships attacked from angles the Vreth had not anticipated. Entire battalions of the swarm were destroyed before the main fleet realized what was happening. From the Xylarian command station, Queen Kalira watched in disbelief. Her people cheered as victory became clear, yet she understood the deeper significance. Humans were not just allies, they were a force that redefined the very nature of war. Their unpredictability and creativity had turned despair into hope. The Vreth, however, were not so easily defeated. They withdrew only temporarily, and their swarm adapted quickly. The humans realized this was not a war of simple battles, it was a war of minds. They would need to continue pushing the limits, forcing the Vreth to fight in ways they could not anticipate, to think against their instincts. One night, Alina walked alone through the corridors of the Xylarian station. The alien architecture was still awe-inspiring, but the weight of responsibility pressed on her shoulders. Every life, human or Xylarian, depended on their next move. Yet she felt a quiet determination. Humans had always survived against impossible odds because they refused to be predictable, because they embraced challenges that others feared. She thought of her crew, of the young pilots who had taken their first deadly missions with courage. She thought of the Xylarians, learning to bend centuries of tradition to face a threat unlike any in their history. And she thought of the Vreth, relentless and adaptive, a test of everything humans had learned. Alina smiled faintly. Humanity had been underestimated for too long. The galaxy had assumed that humans were weak, ill-prepared, and insignificant. Yet here they were, teaching an advanced empire to survive, turning the tide against a species that had crushed civilizations. And the best part, the Vreth had no idea what was coming. The next morning, reports came in from the scouts. The Vreth were regrouping, moving faster, attacking with greater coordination. Yet the humans were ready. Their strategies were evolving alongside the swarm, their creativity a living weapon. Every engagement was a lesson, every victory a statement. Humanity could not be underestimated. Commander Alina Voss stood on the bridge of the Aurora, gazing at the Xylarian fleet below. Smoke and fire marked the battlefield, but hope shone brighter. Humans had arrived in a galaxy that thought them irrelevant, and they were already changing the rules of war. The fight ahead would be harder, more dangerous, but Alina felt certain of one thing. Humanity would survive, and in surviving, they would lead the Xylarians into a future that had seemed impossible just days before. Above the planet, the stars gleamed with a cold light, indifferent to the struggles below. Yet in the midst of chaos, one truth shone clearly. Humans had arrived, and the galaxy would never underestimate them again. The Vreth swarm had learned. Their assaults were faster, more coordinated, and relentless. Entire Xylarian sectors had been flattened, and the humans aboard the Aurora realized that subtle strikes and small-scale sabotage were no longer enough. The enemy adapted with terrifying speed, and the once predictable chaos of their tactics had begun to coalesce into something deadly and systematic. Commander Alina Voss gathered her officers in the tactical room. The room was filled with holographic maps, projections of Vreth fleets, and indicators of their movements. Xylarian advisors hovered nervously in the corners, still struggling to embrace human-style improvisation. "The Vreth are learning from every engagement," Alina began, her voice steady. "Our hit-and-run tactics worked initially, but now they anticipate them. If we continue the same way, we will lose more than we gain. They are predicting our movements within the hour. Their pattern recognition is improving exponentially. But it's the only way to force them into confusion and give the Xylarians a chance to regroup. We create unpredictability. We use deception, feints, and misdirection. This isn't about the number of ships, it's about the way we think. If we strike correctly, the Vreth won't know how to respond." The humans modified Xylarian ships, equipping them with new stealth systems, unpredictable flight patterns, and human-style decoy drones. Engineers worked tirelessly, blending the best of both species' technologies. Pilots trained day and night, learning to anticipate maneuvers that were unconventional by Xylarian standards but instinctive to humans. When the day of the assault arrived, the skies above the target hive cluster were filled with tension. The hybrid fleet moved in silence, shadows among the asteroids, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Alina watched from the bridge of the Aurora, heart steady but mind racing. This mission was the culmination of weeks of planning, training, and adaptation. Success would turn the tide. Failure would mean death. The humans struck first, deploying small squads of ships that darted in unpredictable patterns, scattering the Vreth forces. Zalarian ships, trained to follow rigid formations, were forced to think on the fly, guided by human instructors. The Vreth reacted as expected at first, moving to intercept the perceived threat. Then the humans struck again, from angles the swarm did not anticipate, cutting through supply lines and disabling key command nodes. The battle was chaotic, fast, and deadly. Explosions lit the darkness of space as ships collided, and debris scattered like deadly rain. The humans maneuvered with precision, their instincts honed from centuries of surviving unpredictably. Zalarians followed, slowly learning to embrace the chaos rather than resist it. Yet the Vreth were relentless. They adapted faster than anyone expected, closing in on the fleet with coordinated precision. Alina realized that their success depended not just on attacking, but on controlling the enemy's mind. "Rajan," she shouted, "deploy the neural disruption drones. We need to confuse them, not just damage them." From her command station, Queen Kalira watched the unfolding battle. She had faced many wars in her long life, but she had never seen tactics like these. Humans fought not with sheer power but with creativity and unpredictability. Her respect for them deepened with every maneuver. "They are not merely allies," she whispered to her advisors. "They are a force of nature. They fight in ways we never could imagine. Everything depends on this strike." For a moment, silence descended. The swarm froze, disoriented and unable to act. It was the opportunity Alina had been waiting for. She signaled the Zalarian fleet to advance. Ships surged forward, exploiting the temporary paralysis of the Vreth. The battle turned swiftly in favor of the humans and Zalarians. Entire waves of the swarm were destroyed, and the hive cluster began to crumble. Yet the victory came at a cost. Several human pilots were lost, their ships destroyed in daring maneuvers. Zalarians, too, suffered casualties. The price of this strike was high, but the outcome was undeniable. The tide had turned. As the smoke of battle cleared, Alina surveyed the damage and the survivors. "We've won this engagement," she said quietly, "but the war is far from over. The Vreth will adapt again. They always do. The Vreth never expected us to fight like this, and they still won't." Together they were becoming more than a fleet, they were becoming a force the Vreth could not predict. Despite the victories, Alina remained cautious. The Vreth were intelligent, relentless, and adaptable. They would not be defeated easily. Every move had to be calculated, every strategy flexible. Yet in the hearts of humans and Zalarians alike, a new confidence was growing. They had survived the first major test. They had proven that unpredictability, creativity, and courage could overcome even the most fearsome enemy. Late one evening, as the Aurora drifted in orbit above a recently liberated Zalarian world, Alina walked along the observation deck. The planet below was scarred, cities burning and shattered, yet there were signs of recovery. Smoke rose in gentle spirals, and tiny lights flickered as survivors began to rebuild. Humanity's presence had made a difference. Humans, long underestimated, had given an alien empire a fighting chance. Alina thought of her crew, of the pilots who had risked everything, and of the Zalarians learning to fight in ways they had never known. She felt a quiet pride. Humanity had been called to act in a galaxy that had doubted them, and they had answered, not with overwhelming force but with intelligence, courage, and adaptability. As she looked up at the stars, Alina knew that the Vreth were still out there, waiting, watching, and learning from each engagement. The war was far from over. But one truth was clear: humans had changed the game. They had proven that even a species long underestimated could alter the fate of empires. And they would continue to do so, one unpredictable, daring move at a time. The Aurora gleamed against the backdrop of space, a small but potent symbol of humanity's ingenuity and resilience. Below, the Zalarian fleet prepared for the next phase of the campaign, now guided by human insight. And somewhere in the heart of the Vreth swarm, confusion began to take root, a subtle, growing doubt that would spread with every engagement. Alina allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The humans had arrived, and they had begun to reshape the destiny of an entire galaxy. The Vreth might be powerful, ruthless, and adaptive, but they had never faced a species quite like humanity. And that difference, human ingenuity, unpredictability, and courage, would become their greatest strength in the battles yet to come. The Vreth were furious. Their losses had been staggering, and the swarm had never experienced confusion on such a scale. The humans had disrupted their patterns, shattered their formations, and even damaged the central hive cluster. But the Vreth were relentless. They were hive-minded, and their survival instinct was absolute. The swarm regrouped faster than anyone had anticipated, adapting to the human-led tactics with frightening efficiency. Commander Alina Voss stood on the bridge of the Aurora, her eyes scanning the sensors as reports poured in. Entire sectors of Xylarian space were under attack. The Vreth had launched a full-scale counteroffensive, and the swarm's fury was unlike anything she had faced. "They're hitting every world simultaneously," Lieutenant Rajan said, his voice tense. "It's coordinated chaos. We're spread thin." This was an all-out assault, designed to break not just fleets but morale. Xylarian advisors moved nervously around the bridge, their advanced minds struggling to adapt quickly enough. They had been effective in previous skirmishes, but the scale of this attack was something entirely new. Queen Kalira appeared on the bridge's holographic projection. Her eyes, usually calm and commanding, were filled with worry. "Commander Voss, they strike with fury beyond anything we have faced. My fleets are stretched to the limit. We may not survive this wave." Humans and Xylarians must act as one, not separate forces. The Vreth expect us to respond in predictable ways. We will give them something they cannot anticipate. Xylarian forces, reorganized under human guidance, would exploit the confusion to protect civilian populations and critical infrastructure. It was risky. Failure meant catastrophic losses. But Alina knew humanity thrived on risk and adaptability. The first phase began in the early hours of the local star cycle. Human pilots took the lead, darting through asteroid belts and debris fields, their ships moving unpredictably. Vreth forces, accustomed to precision and overwhelming numbers, struggled to adapt. Chaos rippled through the swarm, and the humans used it to strike deep into enemy lines. "Hit their forward command nodes," Alina instructed. "Disable their communication links. Keep them off balance." Yet the Vreth retaliated with unmatched brutality. Entire human strike teams were trapped in ambushes, forced to retreat with heavy losses. Xylarian fleets, though learning from humans, were still vulnerable to overwhelming numbers. The battlefield became a deadly dance of destruction, each side testing the other's limits. Alina realized that brute force alone would not win this battle. They needed to hit the Vreth psychologically, to disrupt the hive mind at its core. "Rajan," she said, her voice firm, "we need to go deeper. Send the infiltration units to the Overmind. This is our chance to turn the tide." They navigated through the chaos, evading patrols and automated defenses until they reached the heart of the swarm. The Overmind, the central intelligence controlling the Vreth, loomed before them, a vast, pulsating network of energy and thought. "Deploy the neural disruptors," Alina instructed through comms. "Confuse it, overload its network. Make it think in ways it cannot comprehend." "They are not just fighting," she whispered. "They are thinking in ways no other species could. Humans, they change the very nature of war." The tide of battle shifted rapidly, with the swarm unable to recover. But the victory was not without cost. Many brave human pilots were lost, their ships destroyed in daring maneuvers. Xylarians, still adapting to new tactics, suffered heavy casualties as well. The battlefield was littered with debris and fire, a stark reminder that even ingenuity could not erase the cost of war. Despite the losses, the humans pressed on. Alina coordinated the fleet from the Aurora, moving unpredictably and exploiting every weakness in the Vreth lines. Each engagement taught them more about the enemy, and the humans adapted in real time. Xylarians, now fully embracing human strategies, acted with a flexibility previously unimaginable. As the battle raged on, the Overmind attempted to regroup, sending signals to re-establish control over the swarm. Elena anticipated this. Rajan, deploy the secondary disruptors. Keep the Overmind off balance. We can finish this now. Human and Xylarian forces struck decisively, crippling the remaining vessels and destroying the central hive cluster. The battlefield fell silent, the remnants of the swarm scattered and disorganized. Humans and Xylarians had survived the Vreth counterattack, and for the first time they had decisively turned the tide. The cost had been immense, but the victory was undeniable. Queen Kalira addressed her people, her voice filled with awe and gratitude. We have survived because of humans. They are not merely allies, they are a force of nature. Their courage, creativity, and unpredictability have given us a future we never thought possible. The humans had proven themselves not through sheer strength, but through ingenuity, courage, and the willingness to take risks others would never dare. Yet even in victory, Alina knew the war was not over. The Vreth would recover, adapt, and strike again. But humanity had shown its value. They had changed the course of the conflict, teaching an advanced alien empire to fight in ways they had never imagined. The Aurora glided through the remnants of the battlefield, a symbol of human ingenuity and resilience. Below, Xylarian ships moved to rebuild and reinforce, guided by the strategies humans had introduced. The galaxy had long underestimated humanity, but now the humans had shown what it meant to fight with intelligence, courage, and unpredictability. Elena allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. The battle had been won, the tide had turned, and a once dying empire had been given a chance to survive. But she knew this was only the beginning. The Vreth were adaptive, relentless, and intelligent. The final confrontation was still to come. As she gazed at the stars, Elena felt a familiar spark of determination. Humans thrived where others feared to tread. They survived because they embraced the unexpected, adapted to chaos, and fought with courage. And in the heart of the galaxy, humanity had begun to reshape the fate of empires. The next wave would come, stronger and smarter, but humans were ready. They had faced the impossible, and they had survived. The Vreth would learn, as all others had, that humanity could not be underestimated. The Aurora and its crew were a small presence in the vastness of space, yet their impact was immeasurable. They had taught the Xylarians to fight differently, turned despair into hope, and proved that intelligence, courage, and creativity could overcome even the most relentless enemy. Commander Elena Voss took a deep breath, ready for whatever came next. Humanity had survived against overwhelming odds before, and they would do it again. This battle had shown one undeniable truth. When humans fought, the galaxy had to pay attention. The Vreth were retreating, but not out of defeat. They were regrouping, reorganizing, preparing for one final strike. Their hive intelligence had learned from every encounter, adapting to the human-led tactics that had shaken them to their core. Commander Elena Voss knew that the final battle would be the deadliest yet. Every misstep could mean the destruction of the Xylarian Empire, the loss of her crew, and possibly the end of human influence in this sector. The Aurora hovered near the front lines, its sensors tracking the Vreth swarm as it coalesced into massive formations. Elena stood on the bridge, her mind sharp, calculating, and calm. Beside her, Lieutenant Rajan adjusted coordinates and monitored fleet movements, while human engineers and Xylarian tacticians worked together, refining strategies for the decisive strike. Queen Kalira appeared on the bridge's holographic display, her luminous patterns shimmering with tension. "Commander Voss," she said, "the Vreth are stronger than ever. Our losses have been severe, and we may not survive the next engagement. Are you certain your humans can succeed?" "Humans have faced impossible odds before, and we will do it again. But we cannot do it alone. You and your fleet must trust our methods." The human-led strike force would infiltrate the Vreth swarm at multiple points, creating diversions, confusing their hive mind, and striking critical nodes. Zalarian forces would follow in synchronized waves, protecting civilians and planets while executing coordinated attacks designed by humans. This was a battle of minds, strategy, and courage, a fight where creativity mattered more than raw power. The first phase commenced under the shadow of a dying sun. Human pilots, sleek and agile, led small squads into the heart of the swarm, weaving between Vreth vessels and asteroid fields. Every maneuver was designed to confuse and mislead, forcing the swarm to respond in unpredictable ways. Explosions erupted around them, ships collided, and debris floated like deadly rain. The humans pressed forward with precision and daring, their instincts honed from centuries of surviving chaos. "Hit their forward command lines," Alina ordered. "Disable their communications. Make them doubt every move." Ships flailed, formations collapsed, and their hive intelligence struggled to maintain control. For the first time, doubt rippled through the swarm. Humans exploited the confusion, striking key targets with surgical precision. Zalarian ships, now fully trained in human tactics, executed maneuvers they never thought possible, striking simultaneously with the humans and overwhelming the Vreth forces. But the Vreth were cunning. They adapted quickly, redirecting fleets, reinforcing weakened points, and coordinating counterattacks. Entire human squads found themselves trapped, forced to retreat under fire. Zalarian ships, though more flexible than before, suffered significant losses. Alina realized that brute force alone would not win this battle. They had to strike at the very heart of the swarm, the Overmind. "We go deeper," she said to her officers. "We take the fight to the Overmind itself. This is our only chance to end it." They navigated through fields of debris, avoiding patrols and automated defenses until they reached the central hive cluster. The Overmind loomed before them, a vast, pulsating network of energy, alive with thought and malice. The squad prepared to deploy neural disruptors, devices designed to scramble the Vreth's hive communication. "Now," Alina commanded. Pulses of energy surged through the Overmind, disrupting its network. The Vreth ships faltered, signals collided, and the swarm's coordination broke apart. Chaos spread rapidly, and the humans struck with precision, disabling engines, weapon systems, and critical command nodes. Queen Kalira watched in astonishment. "They are unstoppable," she whispered. "They are not merely fighters, they are a force of nature." Inside, the corridors twisted and pulsed with organic energy, alive yet alien. Humans fought with courage and ingenuity, planting disruptors that tore the ship's systems apart from within. The Overmind attempted to adapt, sending out waves of psychic signals to regain control. Alina anticipated this. Rajan secondary disruptors now. The devices fired, cascading pulses that scrambled the swarm further, leaving them vulnerable. From orbit, the battlefield shifted dramatically. The Vreth, once overwhelming in number and coordination, were now scattered and confused. Their ships collided, entire formations collapsed, and the swarm structure began to break down. The humans pressed their advantage, moving unpredictably, striking key points, and ensuring the Overmind could not recover. Despite the chaos, the humans and Zalarians coordinated flawlessly. Every move was a blend of experience, instinct, and creativity. The Zalarians, once rigid in their thinking, now fought with flexibility and daring, inspired by humanity's methods. Together, they were more than a fleet. They were a force the Vreth could not comprehend. The final blow came when Alina personally led a boarding team to the core of the Overmind. The energy pulses from the hive entity throbbed around them, attempting to overwhelm their minds. But humans had learned to adapt under pressure, to improvise where others would panic. They deployed disruptors at critical points, severing the Overmind's connections to the swarm and fragmenting its network. The effect was instantaneous. The Vreth ships floundered, their coordination destroyed. Explosions erupted across the swarm, and for the first time, silence followed the chaos. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath as the surviving forces of the Vreth retreated, scattered and leaderless. Queen Kaelira's hologram appeared on the bridge of the Aurora. Her voice trembled with awe and relief. "We are saved because of humans. You are not just allies, you are a force beyond our understanding. You have changed the fate of my empire." Debris from Vreth ships floated through space, and Xylarian fleets moved to secure their territory. Human and Xylarian casualties were significant, but the outcome was undeniable. The Xylarian Empire had been saved, and the Vreth had been dealt a decisive blow. Elena walked through the corridors of the Aurora, reflecting on the events. Her crew, exhausted but determined, had performed heroically. Xylarian officers now moved confidently, employing strategies that had once seemed impossible. Humanity had proven itself, not through overwhelming firepower, but through ingenuity, courage, and adaptability. The Xylarian capital, once on the brink of destruction, began the slow process of rebuilding. Smoke rose from cities, but signs of life and hope were visible. The humans had not only fought a battle, they had inspired a civilization to see new possibilities, to embrace change, and to fight in ways they never thought possible. In a private meeting with Queen Kaelira, Elena felt the weight of history pressing down on her. The Queen's expression was one of deep respect. "Commander Voss, your people have changed the galaxy. You have proven that intelligence, creativity, and courage can overcome even the most relentless foe. The Xylarians will never forget this debt. And it is what makes us dangerous to any enemy who underestimates us." The Vreth, once the terror of the sector, were now scattered, leaderless, and disoriented, a shadow of their former power. Elena stood on the observation deck of the Aurora, looking at the stars. The galaxy was vast, filled with dangers and wonders alike. Humans had always survived because they were adaptable, fearless, and creative. Now they had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, they could alter the fate of entire civilizations. Somewhere in the distance, the remnants of the Vreth swarms were regrouping, learning, and watching. Elena knew this was not the end. There would be future challenges, new threats, and unforeseen dangers, but humanity had made its mark. The galaxy had underestimated them for too long, and that would never happen again. The Aurora glided through space, a small vessel in the vast expanse, yet its impact was immeasurable. Humanity had arrived not as a minor species, but as a force capable of reshaping empires. Queen Kaelira and her people had learned that strength was not just in numbers or technology, but in creativity, courage, and adaptability, qualities humans possessed in abundance. Elena allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The battle had been won. Lives had been lost, but hope had been restored. The Xylarian Empire would survive, and humans had proven that they were a species to be reckoned with. As the stars stretched endlessly before her, she smiled. Humanity had always been underestimated, but now the galaxy knew. Humans were unpredictable, resourceful, and unstoppable when they fought for survival, and for others who could not survive without them. The war was over for now, but one truth remained clear. Wherever humans went, the universe would never underestimate them again.